Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan, and I'm one of the events associates here at the Animal Legal Defense Fund. Today, we will be having our first 2025 Legislative Affairs Quarterly Update. This webinar does offer closed captioning. To turn on, please click that CC button at the bottom of your screen. And we will have a brief Q&A at the end of the presentation, and you're more than welcome to submit your questions anytime via the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Joining us today is Kim Kelly, along with our Legislative Affairs team. Kim has been the Director of Legislative Affairs for over 6 years and works to develop and advance our key legislative initiatives and to improve and create stronger animal protection laws. I'll pass things over to you, Kim.
Thanks so much, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. We're glad to have you here to talk about the legislative process and where we are with our priority legislation this year. This will be the first of 4 quarterly webinars that we're going to host throughout different stages of the legislative process in 2025. And just kind of set the stage, the states have varying legislative sessions. Some are just getting underway, while others have already concluded for the year, and others may not have started yet. So we're at various points in our legislative sessions, and that will be reflected in the updates that we're able to provide. But at this point in the year, just generally as we approach the end of February, we've been coordinating with coalition members and other stakeholders. We're finalizing bill language and working with bill sponsors or authors to have those bills introduced. In some states, some of our bills have already had hearings and have made incremental progress passing their first committees. And others were actively fighting legislation introduced that runs counter to animal interests, and we have testified in opposition at a number of hearings already. At the federal level, we're assessing the new administration and working with our partners and animal-friendly lawmakers to address national animal protection concerns and introduce legislation to protect their interests. So jumping into the webinar, or into the PowerPoint rather, why do we work on legislation? It really serves a fundamental role in animal protection. Enacting laws ensures that proper legal systems are in place to either prevent cruelty from occurring or provide legal remedies to curtail harmful actions. It's also a mechanism to regulate certain activities that impact animals and can provide funding opportunities to further their interests. At a higher level, enacting legislation also helps set societal norms, and we work on legislation to establish these norms at the local, state, and federal level to maximize animals' interests. If you guys have joined the webinars in the past, you've had an opportunity to meet the team, but I always love an opportunity to brag about them a bit. They're such a remarkable group of individuals with vast legislative experience, with working for decades, passing legislation at the local, state, and federal levels. As you can see, the team is geographically diverse. We have members all over the country, on the West Coast, the East Coast, Northeast, and at some point, we hope we can expand into having physical team members in the Midwest as well. To get us started on our updates, just a visual representation of where we're covering the states, and you can see who of our team members is working in each of those states. To get us started, Allison's going to talk about the work that we're doing at the federal level.
Thanks so much, Kim. Hi, everyone. So glad you could make it today. And my name's Allison Ledke. I'm the Legislative Affairs Manager who handles ALDF's federal portfolio. I'm going to give a quick overview of the political landscape that we're working with in the 119th Congress before diving into issue areas. So state of play. Republicans swept both chambers of Congress and the executive branch in the November elections, making it a Republican trifecta. They have a 53-47 majority in the Senate, a razor-thin majority in the House, which is approximately 218-215, and President Trump in the White House. Republicans are focused on passing President Trump's agenda, and one of the first pieces of legislation they need to pass to do this is a budget resolution, which I'm sure lots of you have heard about. The passage of a budget resolution, which is a non-binding blueprint that outlines fiscal goals, will unlock the reconciliation process. The appeal here is that bills advanced through this process cannot be filibustered, meaning they can be approved by a simple majority in the Senate, not the usual 60 votes. Currently, there's a disagreement between the chambers about the path forward, the extent of the spending cuts, and how a resolution will pass via one bill or two bills, while a government shutdown looms in the background, the date of which could be March 14th. Both chambers have passed different budget resolutions and will now have to conference the differences. Congress did not pass the fiscal year 25 appropriations bills. They merely extended funding through that March 14th deadline. So they will need to figure out all of that and are already behind on fiscal year 26. Additionally, Congress has yet to pass a new farm bill. They've just continued to extend the 2018 farm bill, so they have that ahead of them as well. Basically, we're operating in a space with lots of unknowns, much of which depends on the outcome of some of these larger legislative vehicles I mentioned. That said, we're pushing forward on finding avenues in which we can move animal protection priorities forward. So moving to the good stuff, the Captive Primate Safety Act. Last Congress, we assisted with the successful reintroduction and campaign surrounding the Captive Primate Safety Act, which prohibits the private possession of non-human primates and their sale or transportation for the pet trade. Although this legislation has been around for years, the release of the HBO docuseries Chimp Crazy, which documents the landscape of private chimp ownership in the US, gave proponents an opportunity to capitalize on mainstream interests, similar to Tiger King and the Big Cat Public Safety Act. We saw an uptick in congressional interest and are working with a strong, diverse coalition of stakeholders, ranging from zoos to law enforcement, to keep this on Congress's radar. We expect a spring introduction, so keep your eyes peeled for an action alert. It means the world to have you all reach out to your legislators and makes a big difference. Moving on to the Octopus Act. In the 118th Congress, Senators Sheldon Whitehouse and Lisa Murkowski introduced the Octopus Act. This bill would ban commercial octopus farming in the US and prohibit imports of farmed octopus from other countries. This issue has gained traction in state legislatures across the country, which I'm sure you'll hear about throughout the presentation, and we anticipate seeing some movement on the federal level as well. Although there are no facilities currently farming octopus in the United States, the growing research on their sentience, coupled with compelling media coverage of this issue, and Nueva Pescanova's attempt to open the first aquaculture facility in Spain, has driven interest in preempting this industry before it starts. We're working with the sponsors on a reintroduction plan right now, and we'll be using the growing number of state bills to support the need for a federal ban. Moving on to Animal Welfare Act enforcement. As a little background, the United States Department of Agriculture implements and enforces the Animal Welfare Act. This is the primary federal law in the US that regulates the treatment of animals. It is notoriously poorly enforced and has been at the forefront of many of ALDF's lawsuits. Our litigation team has worked extensively on issues related to USDA's confiscation authority under the Animal Welfare Act. Legislatively, we've been working through the appropriations process to strengthen enforcement of the statute and provide defensive support against attempts to undermine already lax enforcement. And then moving on to avian flu and depopulation, of which I'm sure folks have been hearing a lot about recently. As some background, farmed animal depopulation occurs when large numbers of farmed animals are killed at one time due to either an animal-based disease outbreak, such as avian flu, or due to supply chain breakdown, much of which we saw during COVID. The current nationwide outbreak of avian flu has truly been catastrophic, with nearly 154 million birds being depopulated since February 2022. A large percentage have been killed via ventilation shutdown plus, in which animals are confined in a building without air circulation and essentially suffocate to death or die from hyperthermia as temperatures rise to extreme levels. It unfortunately can take several hours for animals to die, and before they are killed, they feel and perceive the pain and distress caused by the excessive temperature increase and lack of oxygen. We're working through the appropriations process to advocate for increased research and development into more humane methods, such as nitrogen-based foam, which has been shown to rapidly stun animals within a minute, minimizing the pain and stress the animal feels. We've seen a lot of bipartisan support for this, so we're hopeful that we can move this path forward. Moving on to downed pigs. The Pigs and Public Health Act, introduced for the first time last Congress by Rep. Veronica Escobar, aims to reduce the number of non-ambulatory or downed pigs who cannot stand or walk unassisted in the food system. In 2007, the Food Safety and Inspection Service of the USDA implemented regulations protecting non-ambulatory adult calves and extended these protections to calves in 2016. Like down cattle, down pigs not only suffer tremendously, but pose enormous risks of zoonotic disease transmission, including swine flu and avian flu. We're working to reintroduce this Congress, as well as finding a Senate lead, and are pursuing regulatory avenues for this issue as well. And then moving on to, certainly last but not least, defending Proposition 12, one of our main priorities. Last Congress, with ALDF's help, a diverse coalition of groups pushed back against the Ending Agricultural Trade Suppression Act, also known as the EATS Act. This would have overturned California's Proposition 12 and other state ballot initiatives by stripping states' rights and unconstitutionally broadening the federal government's power. The EATS Act would decimate states' ability to legislate agricultural products for the benefit of their own citizens within their own borders and truly cause chaos in the marketplace. While the EATS Act language was seemingly dead last year due to this strong coalition outreach, very similar language directed at regulating livestock products was included in the House Farm Bill, and unfortunately, we expect to see it again this year. This language would create uncertainty in the agricultural market, harm small farmers, animals, consumers, and rural communities while upending states' rights and overturning the results of democratic elections. We are strongly pushing back on this language in conjunction with our coalition and congressional partners. We will have an action alert on this, and I will leave you with the request that I urge you to reach out to your members of Congress to express your strong opposition to this language. We need any and all support we can ask for. So with that, I will pass it over to Alicia.
Thank you so much, Allison. Hi, everybody. I'm Alicia Pragoski, a Strategic Legislative Affairs Manager with the Legislative Affairs team. Really appreciate you being here. And Allison, thank you so much for that extensive overview of our federal work. There is no shortage there of issues to work on and animals to help. So I'm going to start with Florida, jumping right over to our state work. We're gearing up for the legislative session in Florida. This starts in just about a week, so it is a really busy time. Florida has a very short session. What Kim was referencing in the intro, how states have different lengths of sessions. So that means that we have to work very fast in Florida to try and get our bills through. We have a couple of really exciting bills that we're working to finalize this week to get introduced next week. One of those would prohibit octopus farming in Florida. So it is just like the bill at the federal level that Allison was talking about, but it would be Florida specific. And this is not the last time that we are going to be talking about octopus farming today. There is a real movement going across the United States that's really exciting, state level, federal level, to ban this kind of harmful marine farming for octopus. And so we're working on solidifying everything for an intro of a bill in Florida on that. Really excited to protect octopus and Florida's coastlines and marine ecosystems. Then we're also looking to introduce a bill and finalizing everything this week that would require animal behavior training for law enforcement officers when it comes to encounters with dogs. This would work to keep both dogs and officers safe by helping officers understand dog body language and learn methods to reduce the use of lethal force when officers show up to a call and dogs are present. So we're really excited about that one as well. These are our new bill concepts for Florida. So we're going to work with bill sponsors to get those introduced there. Those are by no means all of the bills in Florida. If any folks are tuning in from Florida or any of the states, please know that there are so many other bills that we are working on in all of these states. We're just choosing to highlight a few because we do have a limited amount of time. But we will be assessing other bills in Florida and which ones we want to support and help out with. Now, in addition to Florida's legislative session, we do a fair amount of work on the regulatory side with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And one major priority with the FWC right now is to give stakeholder input on Florida's fur bearer trapping regulations and encourage more humane regulations for our fur-bearing animals. The regulations currently have not been updated in decades, and there are so many ways that they could be more humane for animals and improve animal welfare. So we're working with the FWC on that. I would love to hear from folks if anyone is interested in that. We are actively seeking constituent and public support on that. So, always happy to chat more and dive into what those actual regulations and updates are. Now, on the subject of FWC, there is another issue that has been on our radar for years that we are working on, which is the Florida black bear hunt. In 2015, there was a black bear hunt implemented in Florida, and this turned into essentially just a mass slaughter of black bears. It was a disaster, and hundreds of black bears were killed within a few days. They ended the hunt early, and so we want to do everything we can to ensure that doesn't happen again. This has been discussed on and off kind of every year, considering, okay, is there going to be a bear hunt? Is there not? And so we just want to make sure that we are speaking out and encouraging folks to speak out against a potential black bear hunt in Florida, particularly this year and particularly this spring. And then one more note about Florida. We have Humane Lobby Day coming up. It is going to be March 25th in Tallahassee in person. Some folks might be familiar with that. It's so much fun. We co-host it with Humane World for Animals, formerly the Humane Society of the United States. It's a great day to come meet with your legislators, speak about animal protection issues. Highly encourage everybody to attend. We will have an invite going out on that within the next few days, but please consider coming and registering, signing up, and joining us in Tallahassee. So now I'm going to focus on Illinois. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit out of order on my slide because we have some exciting updates from Illinois. Our main focus there has been prohibiting cat declawing. Cat declawing is an unnecessary procedure. It is cruel. It's where the last bone of a cat's paws are amputated. For humans, it would be like cutting off the last digits of the fingers at the knuckle. So you can envision how tough life would be and how much you would have to change and just the chronic health and lifelong pain that this does cause cats. They are not able to engage in their natural behavior. So we have been working on a state level cat declaw ban in Illinois. It did not pass last session, but the bill has been reintroduced. It is SB 257 by Senator Linda Holmes, and we're helping to build momentum for it with a coalition in Illinois again. It does have an exception for declaw for the physical well-being of the cat. So if a cat needs a declaw procedure for, in case they have cancer of the nail bed or something, there would be an exception for that, but absolutely no declaw for owner preference or convenience. And then at the local level in Illinois, we have some exciting news to share there. Over the past couple of months, both Evanston and Downers Grove have passed declaw ban ordinances. So a lot of progress at the local level. I love seeing this. I feel like we see this in many states where things start passing at the local level. It builds momentum for the state level and then federal level. It shows how important it is to engage in the legislative process at all levels of government. And so then in Illinois, we're also supporting a bill led by our friends at the Animal Welfare Institute that would require monitoring and surveillance for zoonotic diseases on mink farms, protecting both animals and public health there. And then another bill that we are in support of is a courtroom animal advocate program that was just introduced recently. It's another one we supported in the past, but it would allow volunteer attorneys or law students to appear in court and advocate for the interests of animal victims in cruelty cases. And then just a quick note on Michigan, we are supportive of a courtroom animal advocate program bill there as well, working to get that reintroduced this session in Michigan because they have entered a new session. So we're excited about that. We've got a couple of other bills that we're working on in Michigan, but they have a 2-year session and it's a little bit longer. It's year round. And so things are moving a little bit slower than they do in a state like Florida. So that wraps up my update, and I am excited to turn it over to Lindsay and hear about what she has been working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you everyone for being here with us today. My name is Lindsay Beer-Heilig. I'm a Legislative Affairs Manager within LAP. I'm based in Salem, Oregon. And like my colleagues, my work spans a number of states, but I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you today about just a few of the highlights of what I'm working on this year that we think have the potential to make some really great impact on animals. As you can see from the slide, some of the states that I cover include Hawaii, Missouri, and Oregon. In Hawaii, we're supporting a number of really great animal protection bills this year, but our priority bill is a bill to prohibit the farming of octopus for human consumption, which you've heard a number of times already. This is an important bill because, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, we're learning more and more every single day about the incredible intelligence and capabilities of octopuses. They're capable of using tools, learning skills, navigating complex mazes, and even escaping some of the most intricate enclosures, which makes them even more of a threat in farming environments. They're so remarkable that the UK has legally declared them to be sentient beings worthy of elevated legal protections. Like Allison mentioned, unfortunately, there are companies and countries that are looking toward developing octopus farms as the next big thing in seafood. So Washington and California have already passed bills to prevent this practice just this past year, and we're hopeful that Hawaii will take this step too to protect not just octopuses and farms, but local octopus populations that are already under threat, and Hawaii's incredible marine environment from the myriad risks associated with intensive aquaculture. The bill passed out of its first committees earlier this month, and we're hoping for some further movement later this week. And Hawaii's legislative session convenes at the end of April, so we have just a couple of months to hopefully move this bill across the finish line. I'm going to turn now to Missouri. In Missouri, I'm also working on a number of bills, but just wanted to make mention of one really important bill that we had introduced this year in response to a really tragic incident that occurred last year when a police officer responding to a call about a loose dog fatally shot a 13-pound blind and deaf Shih Tzu Terrier. It was a really tragic incident that devastated the family as well as the community, and unfortunately is a situation that is a lot more common than people realize throughout Missouri and the nation. So ALDF provided a grant to Teddy's family to cover their legal fees as they seek justice for Teddy, which in that case is ongoing. But the bill, like in Florida, simply requires that police officers in the state undergo in this case, 4 hours of canine encounter training as part of their basic training. It would include a basic understanding of canine behavior as well as humane and non-lethal methods of de-escalation. We're hopeful that this would reduce the number of police and dog-related incidents in the state and bring peace to citizens and police officers alike. And then also in Missouri, every year it seems we have bills are introduced known as preemption bills, and these bills essentially act to prevent municipalities from enacting animal protection ordinances. This year, we have been fighting a bill that would preempt the entire field of veterinary medicine, along with some other professions. But it would essentially prevent municipalities from enacting cat declaw bans. We were luckily successful. We hope we've been successful in defeating this bill. We think it's already dead for this session, thanks to our and our coalition's efforts. So that is some really early good news out of Missouri. And Missouri session goes until the end of May. So we're going to keep pushing our other priorities. And then finally, I'll turn to Oregon. In Oregon, we're pushing yet another octopus bill to ban the farming of octopuses, as well as the sale of farmed octopus in the state. This bill had a hearing earlier this month as well, and we're hopeful to see further movement on it, and hopefully, along with Hawaii, solidify a strong network of protections against industrial octopus aquaculture along the West Coast. Also in Oregon, we are part of a coalition called Stand Up to Factory Farms, and we're working on a bill to prohibit the creation of new concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, and the expansion of existing ones in areas that the state has deemed to be groundwater management areas. This is a really incredible opportunity to take on industrial agriculture in the state and help prevent the further spread of CAFOs in Oregon. As many know, farmed animals are among the most abused animals in the world, especially when they're in these intensive confinement systems. And CAFOs are also a leading source of water pollution and a huge environmental justice issue. And the existing CAFOs in these groundwater management areas are already a significant source of groundwater nitrate pollution, which harm the surrounding communities. We're actually hosting a lobby day with our coalition tomorrow to build support within the legislature for the bill. So if anybody has any last minute interest and hasn't already signed up to attend, please feel free to reach out to me or somebody else from ALDF for more details. And then finally in Oregon, I just wanted to mention an effort that has been ongoing for several decades, but unfortunately just this year gained some traction in the legislature, and that is to allow the hunting of cougars with hunting dogs in the state. This cruel practice, in which cougars are chased by hounds and cornered into trees or cliff sides and shot at close range, has been banned in Oregon since it was outlawed by ballot measure in 1994. Oregon citizens continue to support the ban on this practice, yet bills are brought up year after year to undermine the state's ban. This year, unfortunately, one of these bills got a hearing for the first time in 18 years. So we were part of a coalition of animal groups in the state to defend against this. We're still unsure of how the legislature is going to decide on this issue, so we continue to apply pressure and monitor closely, and we will keep everyone updated. Oregon's session runs until the end of June, so we have a little bit more time to make some progress on all of these issues. So with that, stay tuned for ways to get involved in all of these important issues. As always, your voices are the most impactful tool that we have, so do continue to look out for opportunities. And thank you so much for tuning in. And I believe I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Kat.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kat Kelly, the Legislative Affairs Fellow. So what does the Legislative Affairs Fellow do? I monitor states for animal protection bills that we are not already involved with, so that we can assess their potential in this session and determine how best to get involved, whether that's on offense or defense, or if we want to keep them in mind for future campaign work, so we can maintain an up-to-date picture on the legislative landscape across all states and be ready to act for whatever comes next. This session, however, I am also covering Washington and Texas for our colleague, Jennifer. So I want to start with a few big highlights in Washington state. At the beginning of this year, we had a quick regulatory success that banned commercial net pen finfish farms from Washington state managed waters. What this meant was that it was a regulation that had to go through Washington's Board of Natural Resources in order to permanently ban these commercial net pen farms from making a return to Washington state waters. In 2017, we had one of these industrial fish farms that had a massive outbreak of fish that escaped from the pens, filled our waters, caused a lot of environmental destruction as a non-native fish species, and Washington state has been prohibiting that practice since, but they've tried to make a comeback, officially gone. Awesome success to kick the year off. We have some other highlights now in the legislative world. The first would be a circus ban, which is similar to what has passed in other states. If this one passes, it would prohibit the use of big cats, bears, non-human primates, and elephants in traveling acts. This Senate bill has actually recently crossed over to the House and has been referred to committee, so we are working very hard to keep it moving and get it to the governor. If you're in Washington state, we will be sending out an action alert asking you to reach out to your legislators to support this bill. Washington has also introduced 3 bills related to wolf management. One is to downlist them on the state level. So downlisting is different from delisting. Wolves are currently listed as endangered in Washington state and must maintain that listing until there's enough breeding pairs for 4 consecutive years across all 3 management zones. Currently, one of the zones has 0 wolves, and the only 2 wolves who have crossed into it in recent years were both poached. So wolves are nowhere near recovered in Washington state. Still, downlisting is trying to take them from endangered status to vulnerable status. So there's that one bill at the state level. There is another where they are trying to do it on a county by county level despite state level management. And a third one that would permit lethally taking wolves at livestock predation sites as part of management research, even though there's already years of research that demonstrates that lethal management is not the most effective way to discourage livestock predation. And there's even studies that show that this lethal response can increase predation down the line. So ALDF is actively opposing these bills because they haven't met the requirements, and this could be devastating to species recovery as well as species survival for this keystone species. In a similar vein, I'm also monitoring wolf management trends across other states for engagement opportunities. For example, Montana is also considering increasing hunting opportunities. For those who may not know, Montana, has already had open season on wolves in the past. They're trying to make this a more permanent feature, not quite a requirement, but encouraging just open season, no maximum taking of wolves. Minnesota, on the other hand, is actually looking to better protect their wolf populations. We're also tackling 2 farming-based bans in Washington state, one for fur and one for foie gras. I want to focus on fur because it was a strong bill which would eliminate fur farming entirely from the state. Washington state currently has about 3 farms in existence. It has been a dying industry for a long time, and this was our chance to finally get rid of it. However, an amendment was recently adopted in committee which creates an exemption for farms that are part of any organization that has its own welfare and environmental certification. In effect, this means the bill no longer bans fur farms at all because there are no minimum standards that these organizations or certifications would need to meet to be lawful in Washington state. So while this is a disappointing turn, I am currently working with the bill's sponsor who also wants this amendment removed, and we're doing everything we can to try to return this ban to its former strength. Unfortunately, it has become an uphill battle at this point. Finally, in Washington state, we are also assessing our recently introduced cat declaw ban for its chances of success, opportunities to engage, and will stay posted on that. So Texas has a longer session than Washington state. They run until June. So there hasn't been a lot of movement yet on these bills, but we are working with a coalition on 2 key bills in the state. The first is a retail sales ban to tackle the puppy mill to pet store pipeline. Details on that bill are still pending because it hasn't been introduced yet, but you can find a lot of details on this campaign in various states on our website. The other bill I'm focusing on would increase penalties for engaging in cockfighting, so it's held to the same standards as dogfighting penalties under RICO. Cockfighting, unfortunately, has been a hot topic across several states this session. These bills are coming in several forms. In Maryland, for example, on the bright side, a bill has been introduced with a hearing tomorrow, which limits the number of roosters a person can have on a given amount of land. The goal of a bill like that is to make owning and breeding fighting roosters unviable. On the flip side, however, there are also attempts to decriminalize activities related to cockfighting, such as attending fights or training birds to fight. Thankfully, these bills don't appear to be moving, but we are ready to respond the moment that they do. Across all states, we're working in a coalition to discover, monitor, and engage with cockfighting bills to protect animals from this blood sport. On a final major note, we're also working in a coalition on a bill in Maryland which would prohibit the production of eggs from hens kept in battery cage systems. 2 companion bills that achieve the same ends have been introduced in the House and the Senate. The House bill has already had its hearing, while the Senate bill has its hearing tomorrow. So we are still early in the process here, but we are optimistic that Maryland may become the next state to ban battery cages, and there will be an action alert sent around soon. So if you are in Maryland, stay tuned for an opportunity to engage your legislators and support these bills. And that covers the major notes from my work at the moment. So I am going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Kim.
Thanks, Kat. Our colleague Jennifer Haig manages our campaigns in California. Unfortunately, she was unable to join us today, so I'm providing the update on her behalf. In that state, we are planning to co-sponsor or support 5 bills at this point. Similar to other states, we are supporting a declaw ban. California is unique from the standpoint that there are a substantial number of jurisdictions that already prohibit cat declawing, and so we're hoping that that momentum will help support the effort in California this year. We're also co-sponsoring a public contact ban, and currently with limited exceptions, this legislation would prohibit facilities and persons from allowing a member of the public to come in direct contact with certain animals, such as non-human primates, bears, elephants, sloths, otters, kangaroos, and wallabies, among others. This type of contact typically involves encounters such as hand feeding, petting, holding, or playing with young animals. And it results in numerous animal welfare concerns like maternal deprivation and social isolation. And because these animals quickly grow too large to be compliant, these facilities continually breed them, which leads to a surplus of older animals. Many of them ultimately end up in backyard menageries, poorly run facilities, or sent to auction. And these encounters also present a significant public health risk, as interactions have led to physical injuries as well as the spread of viral, bacterial, fungal, and parasitic infections. We're hoping California legislators advance this public contact ban, which would bring California in line with 14 other states that have passed similar restrictions. We're also working on a series of puppy mill bills. California has paved the way and has passed numerous laws to counter the commercial dog breeding industry, including it was the first state to pass a retail sales ban. But the industry and some individuals have adapted to skirt restrictions to take advantage of consumers, leading to the need for additional legislative action. Last fall, the LA Times garnered the attention of several legislators when it published an expose detailing several ongoing animal welfare and consumer protection concerns related to the tens of thousands of puppies that are imported into the state every year. The legislators, Assembly members Mark Berman and Steve Bennett, along with Senator Tom Umberg, have introduced a trio of bills this session that we're supporting to help end these nefarious practices. The first is SB 312, the Puppy Importation Transparency Act. And along with the scores of puppies that are sold and imported into the state every year, often online, the state doesn't have a record that currently reflects these animals. And because it doesn't require shippers to file a copy of the dog's health certificate with the state, there's no way to track and know exactly how many are coming in or to support enforcement should there be cruelty concerns. So this bill would mandate that dog importers submit health certificates electronically to the California Department of Food and Agriculture within 10 days of shipment and require those certificates to be made publicly available. A lot of other states already have this in place as well. But this will help consumers confirm their information about their dog or their puppy, and also assist law enforcement agencies in investigating fraud and malfeasance. The second bill would address the deceitful practice of pet brokers who purchase commercially bred dogs from out of state while claiming to be a local breeder and then selling them to unsuspecting buyers. This bill would end pet brokering in the state of California by defining brokers as any person or business that makes a profit by selling animals bred or raised by another, and prohibiting those persons from selling pets for a profit. The last of the three, it would address the rampant scams associated with online pet purchases by prohibiting sellers from requiring non-refundable deposits before the buyer even receives pertinent information about the puppy and the contract terms. So specifically, this bill would void contracts between pet brokers and consumers that require a non-refundable deposit or fail to disclose the original source of the dog or cat prior to the deposit being issued. The bill also requires sellers to return money to the buyers within 30 days if the contract is voided. In California, the bill filing deadline was just last Friday. And as typical, there are numerous animal protection bills carried by a number of other animal protection organizations and bill authors. So we're still assessing all of those bills in the new legislation and expect that beyond these five, we'll be supporting others throughout this legislative session once we have time to review each and determine our resources and bandwidth to support. But you'll hear more about those during our next quarterly webinar, and I hope you'll follow along and stay tuned for action alerts as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm going to start things off by talking about Massachusetts. And first, you can find more information about the Commonwealth and our work in the state on aldf.org/Massachusetts. And that holds true for all of the states that we're engaged in. You can find more info using that type of URL. So first, I just want to acknowledge the incredible animal protection success that we've had in Massachusetts. We have a 2-year legislative session in Mass, and in this past session, we were able to make so many advances for animals. So I want to shout those out. You've heard a lot about declaw. Massachusetts was one of the states that passed a declaw ban, and that was following the passage of similar laws in New York, Maryland, a version in Virginia, as well as so many local laws nationwide. We also helped pass a circus law in Massachusetts, which prohibits the use of certain wild animals in circuses and traveling shows, becoming the 11th state to do so. And this was after the passage of more than a dozen local laws in Massachusetts specifically, and then hundreds of local laws nationwide. Also in Massachusetts was the Ollie's Law, which requires the state to establish minimum standards for certain types of kennels. So specifically for doggy daycare and boarding facilities. Additionally, included language relating to coercive control. And coercive control helps victims of domestic violence, both human and animal. Specifically, it did this by updating the Commonwealth's legal definition of abuse to include that coercive control, which includes specifically committing and threatening to commit cruelty to the animal companion of a human abuse victim. And really excitingly, ALDF saw these type of coercive control laws as a burgeoning trend in 2024. 4 states in just that year, Massachusetts, Colorado, New Jersey, and Vermont passed this type of legislation. And as a result of this success that we saw in Massachusetts, and especially that coercive control language, Massachusetts actually moved up in our Animal Legal Defense Fund annual ranking report, which compares criminal animal cruelty laws across all 50 states and many, many sessions about the animal protection bills that we're highlighting, tips on meeting with legislators, a plant-based lunch, and a big fun group photo. And then we ask folks to attend the meetings that we've been able to schedule with their senator and representative in the afternoon, and we collect feedback about those meetings to determine how we can support you as an advocate, and then also any relevant follow-up with legislators. And filed this session already. We did have our filing deadline in Massachusetts. There are many, many different animal related bills. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. You can find more information on our website about some of these. And frankly, there's even more that are out there, and you're welcome to reach out to me directly for those. So one of them is a possession ban bill, which prohibits a person convicted of certain animal cruelty crimes like torture, animal sexual abuse, and dogfighting from owning or accessing an animal for a period of time to be determined by the court. And this possession ban in Massachusetts ensures that courts would have the discretion to consider each case individually to extend a mandatory possession ban longer than the minimum 5 years and set a permissive possession ban for any length of time deemed reasonable to protect animals. As well as a path to rehabilitation. So an offender could petition to appeal their possession ban status and regain access to animals if they can demonstrate rehabilitation, which could include things like anger management, drug counseling, just as a couple of examples. Pet custody legislation provides a framework for judges to use in determining ownership of an animal when a couple is splitting up. And it typically includes criteria such as what is in the animal's best interest. Traditionally, in divorce and separation proceedings, animals are just considered property to be divided up along things like the furniture, cars, and a house. And this is trending toward a different classification for animals, different consideration to ensure that they don't get lost in that shuffle and that their interests are considered. In Massachusetts, we have a few versions of pet shop legislation, which would prevent the retail sale of dogs, cats, rabbits, and/or guinea pigs, while allowing those pet stores to make animals available in store for adoption in partnership with shelters and rescues. This builds on the success of numerous local laws in the state relating to dogs, cats, rabbits, and/or guinea pigs, including, for example, the city of Boston. And in Massachusetts, we've actually seen localities going beyond this, banning the retail sale of all animals except for fish in some cases. Pets in housing includes bills to ensure that certain types of housing cannot discriminate against a tenant's access to housing based on the size, weight, or perceived breed of their dog, as well as to prevent insurance companies from discriminating based on dog breed. Rodenticides to phase out the use of anticoagulant rodenticides, which are a particularly toxic group of poisons typically intended to control rat populations, which unintentionally often cause the death of cats and dogs, owls and eagles, bobcats and foxes, and so many other companion and wild animals. There are other bills pending in Massachusetts, including the sale of animal tested cosmetics, animal testing for household products, when there are alternatives available, the issuance of civil citations for keeping animals in conditions, to allow the removal of animals or obtain orders to ameliorate specific types of neglect to ensure an animal can be safe without requiring necessarily criminal animal cruelty charges, the sale of farmed fur products, and so many more. And in Mass, we're very lucky to be a part of an incredibly active coalition, including national and state partners, especially that particularly includes the MSPCA and Animal Rescue League of Boston, organizations that bring a very unique and boots on the ground perspective on the needs of animals in the Commonwealth, based on their long history in animal protection advocacy, their humane law enforcement departments, and their animal hospitals and shelters. And then shifting gears a bit to talk about Rhode Island, we saw some great success there last session on pet custody, which I just talked about in the context of Massachusetts, as well as captive hunting, so sometimes called canned hunting. The legislation that was signed into law last year would define and prohibit captive hunting for animals in Rhode Island. And this session, we're working on, and just for context, the legislative session runs January to June, so it's a 1 year, but about 6 month session. And the legislature just returned from winter recess yesterday, I believe. And in the state, we're working on declaw legislation, as well as fur sales legislation, and other bills that are filed already include the use of rodenticides on certain types of properties, the retail pet store sale of parrots that are coming from breeders or brokers, as well as their roadside or flea market sale, and legislation to permit the family court to award custody of a household pet as part of a restraining order. And then just to briefly mention some, again, this is not exhaustive, but some of the legislation that's been filed in other states that we can keep an eye on. It's either already been filed or, depending on the filing deadlines, we expect it to be filed, but maybe it hasn't just yet. So that includes legislation in Pennsylvania relating to cat decline, pet custody, the adoption of dogs and cats that have been retired from research, and possession bans. In Connecticut, relating to the retail pet store sale of animals, the sale and use of rodenticides, and more. In Vermont, relating to the animal testing of products, household type products for cosmetics, the chemicals used in paint, household cleaners, and things of that nature. And in Maine, relating to wildlife killing contests and pets in housing, and so many more in those states and other states, but I'm going to leave it there for the sake of time. And I can pass it on to my colleague, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Steph. My name is Kathleen Schatzman. I'm the Strategic Legislative Affairs Manager within the Legislative Affairs team, and I'm so happy to be able to round out our team's updates. We're going to jump right in with New Jersey and the Humane Pet Store Bill, which has proved to be challenging. This bill would prohibit the retail sale of cats, dogs, and rabbits in pet stores within the state, and advocates working with local shelters and rescues to promote adoptable animals. We know that selling commercially raised puppies, kittens, and rabbits raises serious animal welfare and consumer protection issues. So with this bill, lawmakers can protect animals and consumers while promoting humane businesses. Of note, in New Jersey, there are only 16 puppy selling pet stores who are absolute outliers in their own industry, as there are over 50 pet stores who have signed on in support of the bill. Remarkably, half of the entire legislature has signed on as co-sponsors in support of the bill, representing hundreds of thousands of consumers. There is overwhelming bipartisan political and public support to enact a retail sales ban in New Jersey, one that would prohibit the sale of puppy mill puppies. We just need leadership to sign off and allow the bill to be posted, which is where you come in. So we would welcome your assistance with some outreach to your New Jersey state representatives, urging them to request the Senate President and the Speaker allow the bill to be posted. And if you have any personal connections or contacts that are a degree or two of separation from the Senate President or the Speaker, please do reach out and let me know. You can also find additional information on ALDF's New Jersey webpage. So we're going to move on to the wildlife killing contest ban. And this one is so tragic right now because we've been made aware of a barbaric wildlife killing contest happening in New Jersey this week. The event targets coyotes, raccoons, skunks, red foxes, gray foxes, and opossums who are being killed for cash and prizes. It's the fourth known wildlife killing contest so far this year in New Jersey, and we are only in February. The Animal Legal Defense Fund is a proud member of the New Jersey Coalition to Prohibit Wildlife Killing Contests and are actively working in collaboration with other wildlife and science-based advocacy organizations to put an end to these cruel events. 10 states have banned killing contests, including Arizona, California, Colorado, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. And we are working towards New Jersey being next. You may have just received our email alert on the issue, so please do take action. If you haven't already, our goal is to move the bill in March. Moving on to a possession ban bill. This bill would prohibit a person who has been convicted of a criminal animal cruelty offense from working or volunteering at an animal-related enterprise, or acquiring, owning, or residing with any animal for a minimum of 2 years, which can be extended by the court. The bill also includes a presumption against admission into the state's pretrial intervention program for a defendant charged with a criminal animal cruelty offense. The bill had movement in January and passed out of the full Senate. It is now up in the Assembly Agriculture Committee. And as a reminder, everybody's been noting state sessions. In New Jersey, we're in the second year of a 2-year legislative session, which does not end in June as many other states do. So we will have the opportunity to work on bills until the end of this calendar year. And then moving on to New York. New York also has a biennial legislative session and is in the first of their 2 years. While we can work on legislation year-round in New York, the legislature convenes January through June. So let's start with the Wild Animals Traveling Acts ban. This prohibits the use of bears, wild cats, and non-human primates in circuses or traveling acts. This bill expands upon the animals who would be prohibited in traveling acts, as a law was passed in 2017 that prohibits the use of elephants in entertainment. The Wild Animal Traveling Acts ban bill had significant progress last session, passing out of the full Senate, but unfortunately ran out of time in the Assembly. The bill has just been reintroduced, and we hope to expedite movement this year. Next up is the Renters Insurance Discrimination Ban bill. This would end renters insurance discrimination based on dog breed. The bill is designed to prevent insurance companies from denying, canceling, failing to renew, or charge an increased premium for renters insurance based on the breed of the dog they have. Importantly, this bill allows insurers to make underwriting decisions, as they typically do, based on actuarial risk rather than outdated breed stereotypes. The passage of this bill would ensure a more equitable market for families that have dogs and create a safer and fairer New York for maligned dog breeds. The bill is on the third reading in the Senate Insurance Committee. And now we're going to talk about our octopus farming ban bill. Of note, there is one in New Jersey. I'm just not sure if that is going to have the ability to move before the session ends. For the bill in New York, we're super excited to talk about this one, as it really does have such appeal to legislators and the public. In New York, ALDF is a member of the coalition to preemptively ban octopus farming. As you have heard, the farming of octopus is a highly concerning practice that is quickly gaining global momentum, precisely because octopus farming is unsustainable, environmentally destructive, and incredibly inhumane. New York is a leader in protecting its waters through programs that address pollution, climate change, and other threats. The factory farming of octopus is in direct contradiction to the state's values, which is why we will be working to swiftly move this bill. The great news is we've secured the Senate and Assembly bill sponsors and are currently awaiting bill introduction. So those are the updates for the two states that I primarily oversee. And there's been a lot of information. So we're going to talk about how you can get involved and your role now as an advocate. In all of our ALDF presentations, we include information on your role as an advocate. And we do this first and foremost to thank you for your willingness to take action and be the voice for animals. And because you, as a constituent, have the most powerful and persuasive voice, especially with local and state officials. Now more than ever, we must participate in the process to ensure animals have equal representation. We hope that the information we provided will inspire you to contact your representatives and build a trusted relationship with each of them and their staff. You are a critical component to the success of all of our campaigns, and we greatly look forward to working together to enact lasting animal protection laws. And the next slide is a lot of information that we have here for our website, because we know that we provided a lot of information to you for you to absorb today. You can find a lot of this on the ALDF state pages that Steph had mentioned. Each one has links to action alerts and can provide a synopsis of the issues that we cover. We also have links on our website to learn best practices for citizen lobbying, as we want you to be as prepared as possible and empower you to take action on behalf of the animals. As Kat briefly noted with the fur update in Washington, it is enlightening, albeit in that case, quite disappointing, to hear how quickly things can change on the legislative front, which is why we always need to remain vigilant and remember how our outreach could significantly impact the outcome of any animal protection policy. So please remember to visit aldf.org to sign up for our alerts and receive the latest news. We would also encourage you to review the new 2024 ALDF state ranking report to see where your state ranks on animal cruelty laws. Thank you again so much for joining us today. We simply cannot do this work without you. And I'm going to pass it back over to Kim.
Thanks so much, Kathy. I think we're just down to a couple of minutes, but Megan might have a couple questions for us.
You know, most of the questions we've been able to answer directly as they've come in, and we do have just a minute left. So I think I'm going to go ahead and say thank you, Kathy, thank you, Kim, and thank you to all of the Legislative Affairs team for joining us today, sharing your stories of success and for all that you guys do. And thank you to everyone out there for taking the time to join us and be a part of this webinar. As Kim mentioned earlier, this is a series. This was just our first update of the year. There will be 3 more in 2025. The next one will be in early June. Details soon to come, so we hope that you will join us for those as well.